afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Randy Lopez and we are here. Today is February 23rd. It is 5:02 p.m. and we are at our regularly scheduled board meeting. I want to welcome everybody and just say thank you. It's so good to be back in somewhat person and normal. So very good to see all of you joining us that can be here with us this afternoon. So thank you for that. Thank you to our staff who work so hard to make this possible so that we can do this in a very safe way. Thank you. So with that, I would ask, and before I do the roll call, we'll read our board norms and protocols as we normally do at every meeting. So as a board, we agree to respect the differences of opinions in making decisions for the district, to follow best practices in managing the superintendent and the management of the board itself, to stay on task when conducting business for the district, including while at board meetings, to never surprise the superintendent or each other when conducting official business of the district, to read these norms at the beginning of each board meeting and at board workshops as a reminder of how to conduct our meetings, and to continually self-check to determine if we are following our norms when conducting district business. So with that, before we do the roll call, just a quick reminder, everyone make sure you are muted. And keep your camera off if you're not speaking. That way we save some of the broadband. And then for a reminder for everybody in the room, all of these mics are hot, so make sure you don't say anything that you don't want heard on the mics. We've seen what that can happen and what that can do. So with that, Ms. Smith, would you do a roll call, please?
Yes. Yolanda Clark.
Yolanda Clark, present.
Maxine Drew.
Maxine Drew, present.
Janie Humphreys.
Janie Humphreys, present.
Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, present.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Wanda Brownlee Page, present.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, present.
Dr. Yeager.
Yeager, present.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everybody. Now I would take a motion to approve tonight's regular agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Ms. Smith, roll call.
Hold on just a second. Yolanda Clark.
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew.
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphreys.
Janie Humphreys, yes.
Randy Lopez.
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page.
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen.
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
And Dr. Yeager.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And again, thank you, everybody. Welcome. For those of you that are in attendance in person, so good to see you. And I want to thank our board members and Dr. Miguel, who could be here in person as well. Miss seeing everybody on a regular basis. So with that, I will hand off the agenda to Dr. Miguel.
Thank you so much. And as usual, we want to start with celebrations. So the first item on the agenda is Employee of the Month. So we have Jody Mitchell, who's going to share with us.
Well, good evening, everyone. And I'm hoping my screen did come up. Do you see a lovely picture of a gentleman on the screen?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. So I'm here to talk about the Employee of the Month for February. And this month we have one of our Kansas City, Kansas Police Department officer by the name of Peter Scott. And this nomination actually came from Angela Thomas, which is one of the members of our community. So it came from outside the district, which is very nice. She submitted the nomination due to his actions. I don't have an exact date, but I know it was the end of January. Officer Scott was driving and saw someone broken down on I-70 during one of those very, very cold days. Stopped to ask the person if they were okay, found out that their battery had died and they had a flat tire. And so he got out, tried to assist the person, and ended up finding out that there's no way that they're going to get home. So he actually called for a tow truck, took care of all of the expenses out of his own, and made sure that the person was home safely. So Angela Thomas just said that she appreciated him being a good Samaritan. He's touched the hearts of many people in our community, and with his kindness and his generosity, his compassion for people. So we want to say congratulations to Officer Peter Scott.
Thank you so much, Jody. And the next one is Student of the Month, and Mr. Lincoln is going to present the Student of the Month for us. And we have several, which is a great thing.
So, good afternoon, Board President Lopez, Madam Vice President, I know you're in the students somewhere, fellow board members, and Dr. Miguel. It's always an excitement to get up here and talk about it, even more exciting to see all the group around the room, socially distanced and safe, but a great feeling to be back amongst the family. So our first student of the month is Ana Leveron Guzman from Earl Watson ECE. And Ana is a highly motivated student, completes her asynchronous assignments, and has advanced in her development with the English language. So I'd like to congratulate Ana on this award. Felicidades a la familia de Ana. And thank you for all the great things you're doing at Earl Watson ECE. Our second winner is from John Fisk Elementary. She's a second grader, Desiree Wolf. Desiree has adapted well to remote learning, is a natural leader, and is willing to let her work be the example for other students in her classes so they can see the right way to do things when they need assistance. So if we can get a round of applause, as they say, for Desiree. Sounds even better in person.
Your students are not being displayed the way they need to be.
Our next winner is Osle Tarin Morales, who's a sixth grader at Eisenhower. She's a role model to her younger siblings as well as her peers, works independently, perseveres through difficult situations and activities, and is always willing to share her work as well up on the Zoom screen with her peers if they do need assistance. Osli, felicidades a la familia. Congratulations. And our last student of the month for, let me try to get this right, is Bennett Adink, ninth grader at Sumner Academy. And Bennett is doing all kinds of great things. I could probably sit here and read for 10 minutes the list that was written by
Yes.
the nominating teacher. But I'll keep it shorter, Mr. Lopez, because I know we said to cut these down. But Bennett has been a representative with Enough is Enough. He's been a successful member of the Sumner debate team and met with Debate KC and our KCKPS Communications Director, Sharita Hutton, to discuss the creation of his initiative of 3 to 5 minute speeches geared at stopping the violence and creating better programs for our community in Wyandotte County and KCKPS. So if we give Bennett a round of applause. I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity to honor our students of the month, and we look forward to doing this again in March.
Thank you so much, Mr. Linkus, and congratulations to all of the students. We're very proud of you. The next item is community comment, and I believe we do not have any at the moment, correct?
Correct. No community comments today, but just a reminder for anyone that's wanting to submit comment, please do so by emailing our board clerk, Ms. Leslie Smith. You can email her directly. You can find her information on our webpage, or you can call the office and get a hold of Ms. Smith to submit comment. All comments must be submitted by Monday at noon, the day before the board meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next is communication. So I'm going to start with the superintendent communications. And again, as usual, we have lots to celebrate. So I want to show a picture. It's not showing, I don't think, of one of our students, Caprice Taylor. She's a sixth grader at Carl B. Bruce Middle School. She has been named Junior Youth of the Year for the Bradenthal unit from the Boys and Girls Club. At the last meeting, I shared the high school students that were named, and this time we have a sixth grade student. So we are very proud of Caprice. The big celebration takes place during a Facebook Live tomorrow at 5 p.m. for those who want to follow. We also have A big shout out to our bus drivers. Yesterday was School Bus Driver Appreciation Day, and we know how hard they work, how they are out there in the cold, in the heat, no matter what the weather is, to take our students safely to school. So we want to say thank you for all you do, to all of you. And we have a beautiful picture of our beautiful buses. It was really nice to start seeing buses yesterday and today as we have students, and Ms. Scott has a quick update on the number of students that we had today. So that was nice to see on the streets. A couple of more news. It's National Public School Week this week. So we want to join districts all over the nation to celebrate Public School Week. Public schools educate 9 out of every 10 students, and Public Schools Week honors 50 million students, 3.2 million teachers, hundreds of thousands of specialists and other staff. And today, more than ever, we realize the importance of public school and the importance of supporting public schools. So we call the community at large, businesses and community organizations, to join us in supporting public education. A quick update on Enough is Enough. A reminder that on Thursday, we are gonna have the next Enough is Enough Community Forum, Thursday, starting at 5:30 p.m. You can find the link in enough.kckps.org. And this forum is around mental health and the growing substance abuse issue that's going on, not just here in Wyandotte County, but nationwide. So we invite you to participate. And we want to thank Randy for agreeing to open up the event that night, and to many of our partners that will be part of that event. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. The P3 app is kind of related to this as we continue to partner with our stakeholders in the Enough is Enough program. The district plans to better publicize what's known as the P3 app. And this is a reporting feature for our students, families, and the community that's offered from the Kansas City, Kansas Police Department. It's been around for a while, and it's in the district handbook, but we are planning to take this reporting app and add it to all of the district websites so that students and families can easily find it. So we will have more information as it comes up. And now March is upon us, believe it or not. March is already here, and we have lots of things happening in March. So we want you to take note of, we will be celebrating Music in Our Schools Month, National Nutrition Month, Women in History Month, Social Workers Month, and Theater in Our Schools. So mark your calendars. March 2nd is Read Across America, and the 5th is Employee Appreciation Day, although we know it should be every single day, right? And as you might remember, the Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools Board of Education approved the early graduation of 42 students. And next board meeting, we will have the celebration, which is gonna be via video. We're featuring a video with all of our students. All the audits have been conducted, so we know that these students have completed all of the requirements. So are very, very proud of the 42 students. And we plan to celebrate them here at the board meeting virtually, of course. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Miguel. Just a few from my communications. I just want to extend a huge thank you to Mr. Hoda and to Mr. Edwin Birch and their teams for the work that they've put in to make sure that we can pull off our board meeting in person and virtually, and so that the community can participate and watch. So I just want to give them and their teams a huge shout out for the work that they do. And you know, they've been running our virtual meetings since we've gone virtual. So just I didn't want that to go unnoticed. So thank you for your work.
And if I may add, Mr. President, they make it look very easy.
They do.
Because we can see all of these cameras, you can see us on the screen, you can see us here, but they've been working for several days installing all of these cameras so that this can happen. So thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And your teams are doing a great job. Just a couple of fun things I wanted to share as well. Friday, Ms. Humphreys and I actually were in Room L at the Kansas City, Kansas Early Childhood Center. And we were sitting virtually in a room full of kids. It was great to be in a room full of kids at the Early Childhood Center to learn about and hear from the kids themselves what they've been learning about buildings. And so it was a lot of fun. We got to sing with them. We got to see the buildings that they put together, hospitals, fire houses. It was a great time. So I just wanted to share that and thank the teachers for the work that they're doing with those kiddos and for the invitation. Saturday, Ms. Drew and I participated in the Saturday Academy Family Demonstration Day. Saturday Academy is a great program and resource for students around just improving their education around science and other forms. And you know, it's a great opportunity. So it was great to see so many students, over 150 students, I think, and their families were present. Again, all virtually. And I just want to give a shout out and a thank you to Mr. Edward Franco, who led the small group that I was in, and he did a great job engaging with the students and their parents. So shout out to all of them, and a great opportunity for our KCK students as well. I want to thank Ms. Garcia Stewart, Student Services, and their team, Ms. Laura Mersman, this afternoon, and they got a beautiful day for it. They were out there distributing food baskets through the Harvesters Food Pantry program that we have at our district. And this program helps to feed over hundreds of families within our district. So just wanted to give them a shout out, because even in the winter time, they haven't stopped providing these food baskets to our families. And I think that's a great blessing that we're able to, and partnership that we're able to provide for our families who need it. So just want to thank the staff and volunteers who work those days. They got a beautiful day to be able to do that today. For our board members, just to keep you informed, our budget workshops will be upcoming. Dr. Miguel and I are working on scheduling some dates for those to come up. So be on the lookout in your email, either from myself or Ms. Smith, to receive some possible dates for board workshops coming up in the month of March. Dr. Miguel and I have met, and we are working to come up with some dates that work for us and for the board. So be on the lookout. Make sure you have your calendars handy when you get that email. A couple of other things, just real quick. Don't forget, for our board, we have a special board meeting coming up this Friday, the 26th at 3 p.m., so make sure that's on your calendar. And then we also have a special board meeting on March 5th and 6th, so please make sure those are on your calendars as well. A couple of opportunities for board members. One is you received an email from me regarding the National School Board Association virtual conference. So please, if you could reply to Ms. Smith with your thoughts on that by the end of day tomorrow, that would be very helpful. And then you may have received an email from KASB regarding a Finance 101 workshop. As we're entering our budget workshops, there's an opportunity to just kind of brush up on some of the finance that we'll be looking at. So that's next Tuesday, March 2nd. If you're interested in participating in that, please email Ms. Smith and she can help register you for that. Other than that, the one final announcement that I have is, if you recall from our last board workshop with Dr. Wiesman and KASB, one of the things that we worked through as a board and that Dr. Wiesman helped us with was to identify some board priorities that align with our strategic plan and other efforts that we're doing in our district. She circulated or sent Dr. Miguel, Ms. Page, and I a draft of what that could look like. So we'll be sending that out to our board members for you to review. And Dr. Wiesman would like to set up another time for our board to get together. And I think it'd be a great idea to be able to, as a board, to have thoughtful dialogue around those priorities outside of a board meeting where we can actually dedicate more than 15 or 20 or 30 minutes to that conversation. So you'll also be receiving an email from Ms. Smith looking for dates in March to meet with Dr. Wiesman, KASB, and to go over some of those priorities and next steps in our continued board workshops. So with that, that's all I've got for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And moving on to the board updates. The first one is an update on the superintendent search from JG Consulting. James, are you online?
Nope, thank you, Dr. Miguel. So I'll take that one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry. So just an update for the board and for everyone watching. I was in communication with Mr. Guerra with JG Consulting. Unfortunately, as you know, or you might know, that their team works out of Texas. And so they were impacted by everything that happened in Texas. And so unfortunately, they're not able to join us at tonight's meeting. But I do have a quick update that they sent over to us regarding the superintendent search. So a reminder, the application portal for the superintendency closed yesterday at 11:59 p.m. So at that time, or as of today, we have 21 completed applications from 11 different states. And so they're very excited for the quality of the candidates that applied, and they are looking forward to our meeting on March 5th and March 6th. So please make sure those are on your calendar, board members. We will be meeting at the offices of Mr. Goheen at MVP Law Firm, and Mr. Guerra and his team will join us, I believe, virtually for at least one of those days, where we will do a review of candidates. And so if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and ask, or you can reach out to Mr. Guerra as well. But this is an exciting next step in the superintendent search process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next item is a recommendation that the Board of Education accept as an informational item the report in regard to a service contract with Transio for the 2021-22 contract as submitted by Dr. Bilbo Irvin and Dr. Stern.
Good evening, everyone. Board President Lopez and Vice
I don't. Dr. Stern, I don't think we can hear you very well. Hold on just a minute.
Yeah, sorry everyone, a little technical glitch. We're having trouble hearing the folks on Zoom. Just as I was giving our communications team so much props, we had to have a glitch. I jinxed it. I apologize, everybody. It's my fault.
It's all Mr. Lopez's fault. Do we want her to try again? Yes. Dr. Stern, would you say something so that we can check?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you a little bit.
I'm trying to talk loud.
So does it help? Okay, we'll try this. No.
Now it's echoing on our side.
Keep going. I think it's working. As long as I don't.
Is it better now? Can you hear me?
We
Yeah.
can hear on this side.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I'm not sure they can in the boardroom.
They're shaking their heads.
Yes.
Okay. Well, good evening. I'll start over. Good evening, Board President Lopez, Vice President Page, all the board members, and Dr. Miguel. I know some of you have never seen me before. I'm kind of new. I'm the CTE coordinator for the Career and Technical Education, and we are proposing a new platform called Transio tonight. And the first thing I wanted to talk about was just why Transio and where did this idea come from. And so, as you know, we've done a lot of work this past year with the KISA teams and the KCKPS strategic plan, and then the CTE department's been working a lot with the Kauffman Foundation on the real world learning initiatives. In addition to that, as a CTE department, we've been working with KSDE on some work-based learning initiatives in the state and the IPS professional learning networks. So a lot of conversations have been happening this past year, and a lot of thought and reflection has gone into how do we make our career and technical education programs better. And so one of the things that came out of that was some just needs for some better processes, better ways to collect data, and we think Transio is a great addition to help us meet some of those needs. So the first platform or the piece of Transio that we're investigating is called Transio Jobs. And Transio Jobs is a work-based learning management tool. So the first chunk at the top of these bullets that it helps us address is if we do student internships, it helps us kind of house the paperwork pieces that the state is expecting us to have and track student internship hours. One thing we want is our internship experiences to be really good experiences for not just the student, but for also the KSDE came out with this past summer a work-based learning guide, has lots of really good information on how we can structure work-based learning from elementary, preparing through elementary, middle, and then into those experiences into high school. There's a lot of paperwork pieces in their personalized learning plan that they expect to see when they do an audit. And so we want to make sure we have a centralized district process in place to house those pieces. The other thing that it can help us do is better connect which opportunities are available to the students and have that in a district centralized location. So the job board would allow business partners to post opportunities, but also allow students to see those and apply for them. And the last piece of the transio jobs is really important when we think about how work-based learning, we're going to dive into the Kaufman Initiative. Work-based learning experiences don't just happen in the senior year. We have to be preparing students, K, first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way through. And so finding business partners who want to come in and work with our district and then fostering those relationships is really important. Who wants to be a guest speaker at a career fair? Who wants to come in and judge projects that the health science class has just completed? Who might want to offer an internship to our students? So being able to kind of track who those individuals are at those business locations and then fostering those connections and managing them. Also allows us to have a common space to host our CTE advisory committee, not just host the meeting, but to post those documents and agendas and meeting minutes. The second component is Transio Journey, and Transio Journey addresses our IPS, which is a piece of requirement, and provides us the ability to have one place to track that IPS, have that digital portfolio piece that we need. And the digital portfolio is also very important because with the work-based learning initiatives from Kansas, what we're hearing them say is KSDE doesn't want work-based learning to occur randomly. They want it to be connected to the IPS, and they also want to see a portfolio showcasing what that student learned from their work-based learning experience. So if a student does a client-connected project or goes and completes an internship, they want to see something tangible in that portfolio demonstrating what the student learned and where they grew. So, and we also want that to be something they can access after they graduate, not just during their 4 years of high school. It's something they can take with them. The other thing that's exciting about this is it allows us to track and get better data. We can see and track which students participated in different experiences. And when we have so many middle and high school students, that can get out of control really quickly, trying to figure out who did a field trip and which student participated in mock interviews. It's hard to keep track of all that with over 12,000 students. The last thing that I'm most excited about, since I do the CTE data for KSDE every summer, is better analysis of which classes students take in the pathways, and then where do those students end up. Not just who's taking accounting, but then who took a sequence of classes on our pathways, and what are they doing after graduation. We do that data, but it's very tedious and time-consuming right now. We're hoping this is going to make that a quicker process and give us better data. The thing you were waiting to hear is how much does this cost us? And so this is my section called Nuts and Bolts, and the implementation fee is a setup fee, and that's something we only pay this year. I've broken this down by middle and high school because we have to pay for this out of 2 CTE funding streams. When you see CTE vocational funding, that is our half-credit funding we earn from our funded CTE classes and our pathways, and that money comes from our count on September 20th every year, and that money can only be spent on high school things. So I can't pay for our middle school access to Transio from that CTE vocational funding, so we're going to use our CTE Title IV funding because that money can be used for any grade level. So we have this broken up by middle and high school based on our current enrollment, and this is a yearly expense, but we won't have the implementation fee for the second and third, continual years. And we do think this is something that we can sustain. This isn't something we're going to be searching for funding for in the future. The last nuts and bolts slide I have is that we want to hopefully begin our relationship with them soon so we can get this set up and ready for the next school year. We want to involve our KISA IPS team and our strategic planning team. The theme 2B revolves around the market value assets, and it's mostly our CTE staff.
So, Dr. Stern, I want to clarify that although the memo says it's an informational item, we are really hoping to get approval of this tonight. Is that correct? So that we can start implementation on March 1st?
We would love that, yes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Miguel. Thank you, Dr. Stern. Do we have any questions from board members regarding the presentation?
I would like to make a motion that we approve this platform, the Transio platform. I think it's a great tool to have in place. With a daughter in high school, I see how important it is because it's so hard to keep track of things. So I think this is great, and it goes along with our initiative and strategic planning, in which we can truly help our students. So I make a motion that we approve the Transio contract as
Mr. Lopez, you asked for questions, and I know Dr. Yeager made a motion, and I think what was presented is good, but my biggest problem with it, it should have been presented before, because the way it's supposed to go, this meeting should be informational, and then we vote at the next meeting, and I'm just afraid we're gonna set up a bad precedent in terms of people not following timelines. I don't mean any harm, sweetheart, but I think we should have got this back in January or December to make sure we get it done in a timely manner. So my biggest issue is it shouldn't be presented today for us to vote on it today. It's supposed to be for informational, and then at the next meeting we vote. And we gotta do a better job of getting our information in on time.
And I'll take responsibility for that, Ms. Page. I did share with Dr. Stern what our procedure was, but with her being new, I will take responsibility for the fact that normally that's how we do it, and that's the reason why I sent all the information to the board ahead of time, because I knew it was out of the ordinary. But I also want to highlight the fact that although it may not be the way we normally do this, with one meeting for information and the second meeting for approval, because it's something that they want to start using right away, and it's kind of late in the year, I gave the okay to present it for both, with the caveat that if the board wanted to hold off and have some more time to review it, we would also accept that, of course.
Thank you, Dr. Miguel. So, and thank you, Ms. Page, for bringing that up. There is a motion on the floor, so I do just want to procedurally make sure that we follow that as well. So there's a motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
There is a second on the floor. Okay, and so I'll get back to Ms. Page. Ms. Page, or any other board members, any other questions or thoughts? And thank you, Dr. Miguel, for the explanation and for bringing this forward.
I would like to point that Dr. Miguel did preempt us in advance, advising us that it was not our procedure. She explained it very thoroughly to give us time to research and respond. And so although, sometimes things are out of order, or sometimes, things may come of us, I appreciate Dr. Miguel as superintendent bringing us to us, because this is something that we can maybe put off, but at what sacrifice to our children.
And I'd just like to add.
I have a question, please. Dr. Stern, is the expectation that you'll use this at every middle school and high school?
Yes, what we're trying to have is like a district place to kind of manage some of these things, like our internships, instead of having each school kind of trying to go at it on their own.
So how are you doing this now, or are you?
Well, right now we're not for the internship piece. We don't have a lot of we have some internships that are functioning, but not very many. And so we would like to see this kind of restructured so that there's more opportunities for all the campuses.
So right now, Dr. Wynn, we are housing our data just on Excel sheets. So we're just using Excel sheets to do student data tracking for all of our high schools. So we have 5,000 names on different Excel sheets, and we go in and we put a code 1 if they have an internship or if they're doing a certain project. So right now it's convoluted, and we just peck through the Excel sheets right now. So
So
hopefully
what,
this will
okay,
help
so-
us. Yes, ma'am.
so you want this 21, 22, correct? Starting, so.
Yes, ma'am.
I guess my concern is, and of course, and I'll ask the question, so the funding is from different budgets, correct?
Yes, ma'am. We're using our CTE funds for high school and then the Title IV dollars for middle school.
Okay, so why aren't we waiting until August when the new year starts, or at least summer? Why is March 1?
So we picked March 1 because if we start in August, then we wouldn't have that lead time to kind of set up the platform. One of the beautiful things about Transio is you can set it up to kind of customize it to what your district needs it to do. And we want to make sure we have adequate time for that setup. We don't want to feel like we're rushing, especially when we're heading into summer soon. A lot of the staff working on this will be year-round staff, but we want to make sure we've had enough time to really set this up and get it ready for the school year, so we're not scraping something together really quickly the first weeks of August.
So actually this, you don't have to start March 1. You could start July 1 at the end of the fiscal year, correct?
We could, yes.
Okay.
But Dr. Stern, correct me if I'm wrong, you're trying to also make sure that you can train teachers and everyone who's going to use it before they leave for the summer. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and that's the danger of starting over the summer is any staff members that don't work during the summer, then we can't train them really till right before school starts. You know, when
Well, you can always train them. I mean, if this is part of their job, you can train them over. Now, you may have to pay them or something, but just because they don't work in the summer, it doesn't mean that they can't train on something that is connected with their job. So could you go back, please, to the finance piece?
Yes.
Okay, so this 47 is what?
That's the total. And then I just broke it down from the two funding streams, the cost for middle and the cost for high school at the bottom.
So these funds are being expended out of current budget?
Yes.
Okay. So what is this, an annual cost?
Yes, except there won't be an implementation cost. Those are one-time fees.
Okay, is that just $1,750? And
Yes,
$1,750
each of the
twice?
platforms. So that will be a savings for the next time we renew for next year.
So when would you renew?
If we start March 1st, we'd renew every year on March 1st.
Ms. Drew, you had a question or a comment?
Just wanted to say, considering what we're dealing with the pandemic, and most of the time when things are being presented to us, they give us enough time for information so that we can make a final decision. This is just a situation that just happened because of the fact that we needed to get it done, and I think it would be great for us to go ahead and approve it.
Thank you.
Ms. Drew, I'm not clear that this is.
Dr. Nguyen, did you get frozen?
Well, Mr. Lopez, let me say again, I don't have a problem with the program, but to me, if we vote today or whether we vote the 9th, I still think we need to hold the protocol. Yes, we were sent the information, but to me, once we start this, then we're gonna open up a floodgate. Because you know somebody else is gonna come. Well, so important, blah, 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 and then we go on. We still have the right to ask questions and make a comment. I know a motion was made. He asked for questions or comments.
So I do want to give a chance in case, before we go on, I'm looking at my screen trying to make sure. Ms. Clark, did you have your hand raised? Okay, thank you.
I just have a quick question. I want to make sure I understand. This is like a case management system. Is that what we would be using this for? Is that what I understood? And then my only other question, and this is just, I'm just sensitive to this, and having a lot of different platforms that we use for different things when we're serving the same student. is there no other platform that we have that you all look at? Like, what other platform that we are already currently using that maybe we could have built off of versus having a platform for this and a platform for that?
We don't have anything right now that we're using that does these things. That's kind of one of the, we've been searching. When I've been in the work-based learning trainings from KSDE, I've been asking in the chat, you know, who's using what platforms do you have? How do you manage these things? Smaller districts, they can manage things easily with Google Forms, Sheets. The problem is we have such a large scale. It's hard when you have 12,000 students to track and manage all of these moving pieces. And so we have been investigating what's out there and talking to the other districts. And some other districts in our area are also going to be using Transio, so it's kind of exciting. A lot of them are Kauffman Initiative partners as well. So you know, that's kind of where this came out of. It's they're not really many out there that are like this one.
Okay, that's fair. That, I mean, you answered my question. I agree. A spreadsheet should not be the way we're housing our information. I just, again, I'm really sensitive to different areas having their own platforms, but we're one district. So
right. And this system does communicate with like Infinite Campus and our existing systems. It just does something different with that information to make it a little more manageable. So when I talked about analyzing the CTE data, it's no joke. It's a spreadsheet that TIS pulls for me, and it has a line for each student in every CTE class they've ever taken in high school that I go one line at a time through. So, I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of rows. It's a really great time in my life in the summer, but this hopefully will be the magic solution to kind of save some time and allow us to focus on something else.
Very fair. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Stern. Thank you, Dr. Bilbo Irvin, and board members for questions. So there's a motion and a second, and I do appreciate the comments around the protocol and the process. You know, I think our superintendent leadership did provide context to that. So we'll move forward with the vote. Ms. Smith, if you would do a roll call vote, please. So there's a motion to approve the Transio contract.
Ms. Clark?
Ms. Clark,
Yolanda
yes.
Clark? I'm sorry.
You're fine. Yolanda Clark, yes.
Okay, thank you. Maxine Drew?
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphrey?
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez?
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page?
Wanda Brownlee Page, I'm not voting against the program. I'm voting the way the whole procedural thing works. So no, in that regard.
Thank you. Dr. Nguyen?
I have to agree that we have to be consistent in our approach. If this was so necessary, it should have come to us before. So I will have to respectfully vote no.
Thank you. Dr. Yeager?
I believe there is value in equity, and we've held our students back by our actions. We can no longer afford to continue to wait day after day and prolong what is necessary to give our students a head up. So I vote yes, and it's very important that we support our students. We should vote based on the principle of the program and how it would, give our students a platform. Whether we disagree or not, I am excited that this will be passing.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Stern. Thank you, Dr. Bilbo Irvin. Thank you, board members, for the conversation.
Thank you, everyone. And the next item is the committee updates, and that's you, Mr. Lopez.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Miguel. So I just want to say thank you to our board members. We had set board committees last year and then got interrupted with COVID and everything else, but those have been resurrected and are beginning to meet again. So on Friday, our finance committee met. Dr. Yeager is chairing that committee, so I just want to thank Dr. Yeager and staff and the other board members who are on the finance committee for the work that they did on Friday and as we continue moving forward. Dr. Yeager, do you have any updates that you want to provide today? I know I didn't check in with you, I'm sorry, but.
Oh, no, that's perfectly fine. So we did meet and we discussed the role and purpose of the Finance Committee. Leslie did send to the other board members feedback as like a basis of how we can run our committees with structure. So if you all have a moment to give feedback to her based upon what you think may be modified or changed or clarified on your committee, that would be great. We did talk about, how it will work in the importance of procedures and practices, and how when we are in the meeting, we'll have discussions, but of course, we'll still come back to the full board for approval. So that's a summary of it, and if anyone has additional questions, feel free to reach out to Leslie. She does keep the minutes for us.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. And I know they've set a future date for meetings, and those will be posted as well, so that folks are aware of when those meetings are. So I want to thank the board members for their work and the time on the Finance Committee.
Mr. Lopez, I'd like to add that Dr. Yeager and I will be wordsmithing the document that was sent to you to make sure that all of the components of it, as well as the board responsibilities from board handbook, will be included. And also, we go through the training with that fire tower or water tower, whatever it is, and there's always the comment of the board does not get in the weeds. Well, when it comes to finance, the board is going to have to climb down a few steps to that ladder closer to the field. And so my request is that if the board members do not want to know details, I respect that, but do not block the responsibility of the finance aspect of our role. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. And I would just say for all board members, please review that document that Dr. Yeager and Dr. Nguyen both referenced. It was sent out by Ms. Smith, so you should have it in your inbox. Just to review to see if you have any questions as we look at our academic committee that should be meeting. We want to make sure that we're consistent between both committees and how we operate and the responsibilities and roles, and making sure that they do align with our board priorities and handbook. So please, if you have any questions or thoughts, you can send those to Ms. Smith, or you can even reach out to Dr. Yeager to work on that.
And I want to remind the board, when there have been some references to getting in the weeds, that we welcome any questions that the board has, but also that you have a tool that you can access any of the expenses. And there has been training available for the board. And if any of the board members would like to have additional training, we'd be more than happy to provide it, so that at any time you would be able to go into the system and look at any of the expenses and at the details that you may want and some other board members may not want. So that's always available.
Thank you, Dr. Miguel. Thanks for that reminder. That is helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's it for our committee updates.
Thank you so much. The next is reentry, an update on school reentry, and we are asking that the Kansas City Board of Education approve one of the reentry options in the update on school reentry presentation that Ms. Scott is going to share with us.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, President Lopez, Vice President Brownlee Page, Dr. Miguel, and board members.
This is Yolanda. I'm going to interrupt for just a moment. We can't hear very well on this end.
No, we can't.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Clark. Give us 1 second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So, good evening again. We're here to present and discuss reentry. We have action that we are requesting from you based on updated information that we will be presenting this evening. Next slide. So first, we are happy to discuss that students at our elementary and high schools were in session starting yesterday. These were our students that had not connected or had limited connectivity, as well as our seniors who are in danger of not graduating while we have been in remote learning. Our goal was to bring them back in early to reestablish access to learning. Today, approximately 2,400 students overall were in our schools for connectivity, assessments such as KELPA or ACT, or our seniors. Dr. Pitch has reported approximately 250 of our seniors have been in session over these past 2 days. A reminder that middle school students will begin coming in on March 1st, so we will update you on their numbers as well. In a previous board meeting, you approved a hybrid model for re-entry beginning on April 5th. Students would attend AA or BB schedule depending on their cohort, while those families who opted to remain remote could continue in that learning mode. With this approval, it was stated that teachers would not have to teach simultaneously. As you will see in this presentation, upon further preparation and planning, some needed modifications have become apparent. We are now coming before you to recommend 2 updated proposals for re-entry. A list of pros and cons for each option were provided to you for review. We will highlight some of those this evening. We will be asking for a decision to be made this evening in order for plans to be finalized. One example is nutritional services needs at least 4 weeks' notice to order food. It's also worth noting that our state legislature is proposing a statute that all students in the state of Kansas will return to school on March 26th. Presented on this slide are the 2 proposals that we are bringing before you for consideration. The first is to stay with the hybrid option, yet we are proposing a change to how teachers will be teaching with this option. With the updated hybrid model, teachers would teach their AA students in person on Mondays and Tuesdays, while their BB students who are remote on Mondays and Tuesdays would live stream into the classroom to receive the same instruction as their AA peers. This is what we mean by simultaneous instruction. Again, we do know that originally it was stated that we would not have our teachers do simultaneous instruction, but we have come to find that this is not a viable option, particularly in our secondary schools. Some of the pros to this updated hybrid model are less students in our schools, students receiving more instruction with the updated simultaneous teaching option than just staying with regular hybrid. Our teachers would not have to have multiple preps for their lesson plans for teaching in person, as well as having plans for those students who are remaining at home. While some of the cons to this updated hybrid model include many students may have different teachers from the beginning of the semester. Hybrid schedules can be difficult on our families. Some of our families may experience connectivity issues and still not be able to access the live instruction. Teaching both remote and in-person simultaneously will be difficult for teachers to monitor all learners, and adjustments to when planning times occur may be necessary. With this, however, we have explored hardware options that could assist in teachers facilitating simultaneous instruction, and it is of note that that hardware is costly. The other proposal then that is bringing those students whose families selected the hybrid option back on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Wednesdays would remain a remote learning day, which allows for cleaning to happen on the campuses, as well as the approved early release professional learning sessions. The pros for this proposal are students will receive more instruction versus a hybrid model, accommodations, differentiation, intervention for academic and social-emotional learning needs are more thoroughly provided. Students will be able to connect with their peers in person. It provides more normalcy in the lives of our children, and it offers the ability to meet the needs of our diverse learners. The cons for this proposal are that there will be an increased number of students in our buildings, which may create issues trying to adhere to social distancing, specifically at some of our secondary schools. There are also maybe issues with sanitizing and mitigation strategies in between classes and cohorts. And there may be a need to adjust planning times as to when they occur. What we request is your action on selecting either to remain in the hybrid model with the adjustment of having teachers teach simultaneously, or the 4-day in-person model. We have consulted with various departments, building principals, as well as the NEA executive team. After weighing out all possible pros and cons for each option, we are recommending that the board strongly consider the 4-day in-person model. We also want to note that for our families who selected to remain remote, they will still have that option. However, if you do vote to approve our recommendation, we would open up a 5-day window for those families who opted for remote to go in and change their option if they choose to do so to come back in person.
Or vice versa,
Or
right?
vice versa, thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Scott, for the presentation and for the information. Board members would open up for any questions specific to what was presented tonight. Thank you.
This is Dr. Yeager. I have a question, and that's concerning one of the issues you brought up with class size. And so, have you guys thought of putting a cap on those class sizes? It was explained before that students would essentially follow the same cluster of children, but how can we somehow ensure that there's no overcrowding and really try to adhere to that social distancing that is recommended?
So at our elementary schools, the health department went ahead and stated that our students could be in learning pods, and the schools have adjusted for that. We do realize that this may be an issue more at our secondary schools, depending on the size of the classroom, as well as the size of the students who are supposed to be in that course. And we will rely on our buildings, specifically our principals and counselors and teachers, to come together. If I'm perhaps teaching a class third hour and I have socially distanced my classroom like here in the board, and maybe I only have room for 15 students, but my class load is 20. I may have to move my classroom during that period and teach from another classroom that could accommodate that number of students and keep them socially distanced.
We also want to remind the board that at this point, and we know we are opening it up for changes, but at this point we have approximately 50% of our student population that have selected to be in person. So we're not, at this point, we do not have the regular size classes.
Okay, then my second question is for those who choose to stay in a remote virtual learning, how will that look? So will that look like the teacher in the classroom teaching the same students with the camera there, or will there be different pots of teachers teaching the students that decide to stay virtual? I'm just trying to get how that will look for those 50% who are staying at home.
What we're looking at, Dr. Yeager, if I am understanding your question correctly, is if we do have families that still choose to remain remote, those students will live stream in and receive the same instruction as their peers who are in person.
So that's kind of like a blended module. So there's going to be a camera, or they're going to use their computer, and the students will still be able to, come in during the scheduled time. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, as we think about social distancing and being able to give students this type of 4-day schedule, I truly like the 4-day schedule because of the continuity. Was there any other thoughts relating to like half of those students coming in, or it's just easier for everyone just to have the full 50% come in?
Well, that actually is both options that are on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So with the modified hybrid, we would remain with just half of those students coming in person on Monday and Tuesday. The other half would come in on Thursday and Friday. That's what that modified adjusted hybrid schedule means.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yeager. Other questions from other board members?
Yeah, you mentioned in the presentation SB 235, which our state legislature is going to vote on in March. And for those, unless you've been on another planet, you need to know that they're working hard because they want to bring all the kids back in.
Right.
And so if that's the plan, and we're saying the parents still have that other option, do they really have that option?
Well, I think we're not very clear on how they are going to enforce. So when they say, when the legislature proposes the bill that says that all students will be in person, I'm not very clear, and I haven't heard any explanation as to what options will parents have. But we are, based on what we know the push is, and also on the reality and the recommendations of the health department, who have relaxed the guidelines and have come to the board and to us. We still meet weekly to say, you know, it's time to bring kids to school. We have the data that shows that students do not transmit the virus at the rate that it was thought at the beginning. That's why we are proposing this second plan, that rather than still keep half of the students or 2 days a week in and the rest of the week, which would be 3 days out of the week doing remotely, which we know is not the best for kids, we're saying, knowing that that's the way in which we're moving anyway, let's bring them all in person, those who have selected in person. If there is then a legislation that says students will not have the option, then we will have to communicate that to parents. But at this point, we're planning on what we know exists right now, which is parents still have the option.
Okay, and then my second question, for example, the situation at Harmon, where you only have one really math teacher. So how are we going to help those people manage such a large group of kids and teach while they're teaching in and teaching online? Has there been a plan to help them? Because they don't have enough teachers.
Yes, and that's actually when we are stating that we're exploring those hardware options, that can meet our needs right now with simultaneous teaching, but looking to the future when we do have vacancies in these hard to fill areas, if I am a student at Harmon and there isn't, let's say, a physics teacher, but there is a physics teacher teaching physics at the same hour at Schlegel, I could live stream in as a Harmon student to Schlegel with this hardware and get my instruction at the level it needs to be. We would still have the need to have perhaps a long-term sub in for supervisory purposes, but this hardware could allow us to assist with some of our hard to fill content areas.
And I think, Ms. Page, that is going to be, you know, how there were many things that were negative about this pandemic, most of them, but we have realized that it has shown us ways of doing things that we hadn't thought about before. So in the past, before the pandemic, we were tied to the actual people that we had in each building. So we may have a fabulous physics teacher at Harmon and a vacancy with either a substitute teacher or maybe a less qualified teacher teaching that class at another school. Now we realize one of the benefits of this pandemic is we have learned we can do a lot remotely. So if we have this fabulous teacher at one school, why couldn't the other kids stream in that class? And of course, we would have a responsible adult with those students also, but they are getting the actual content and instruction from the highly qualified teacher.
Okay, well, are we making sure we got somebody? I keep hearing that it's going to happen, but have we looked at those scenarios and begin to work on putting someone here and someone there to make sure we cover everything and everyone?
We have. Yes, that has, excuse me, that has been part of our preparation.
It looks like Ms. Tishman on the screen has something that she wanted to share, sorry. Ms. Tishman, go ahead.
I was just going to add, we are actively working on trying to find some additional subs who are credentialed in especially the hard to fill areas, so math and science. So we are actively advertising for that right now. So I just wanted to let you know we are working it diligently.
Thank you. Ms. Humphreys has a question.
As I've been listening to surrounding school districts, quite a few of them are going back to 5-day weeks. Is there a reason we selected a 4-day week?
Well, I think the main reason is it's going to be the first wave of students in, and we want to make sure that we still have a day when we can do some of that deep cleaning that may need to happen when all of the kids are in the building.
So we'll still make the required hours for the state?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
And Wednesday would still be remote learning for half a day, and professional development for half a day. So the hours would not really change for the kids, except for the Wednesday morning would be remote, but they would still have class.
Okay, I was just curious about the difference between the other districts and us doing the 4-day.
Ms. Clark, did you have a question? It looked like you had something to share.
I do. I have a couple of questions. What does this mean for the athletes? So I think at one point we had talked about, and forgive me if I don't quote it exactly, athletes that were participating in sports. Of course, I thought they couldn't come to school. They can come to class. What does this do? I won't try to quote it because I'll mess it up.
The health department has released that requirement, and they have also released the requirement of having them cohorted.
What was the last part? I'm sorry.
That we do not have to cohort them anymore, and meaning that they needed to go to all of their classes together. And I think the health department realized that's not feasible for schools, so they are releasing that. And right now, we are waiting to hear also on how flexible the health department is going to be regarding the 6 feet distance. So we may have some additional information coming in this week.
Okay, and what does this do for staff? So it kind of goes back to Ms. Page's question, and this is a little bit out of the box, but if we have staff that can't return, already knowing that we already have a shortage on teachers, which goes back to Ms. Tushman's comment, how will we be leveraging staff, or what accommodations will we be giving to staff to make sure, because I'm sure we will have a nice number of kids that still, their parents still won't want them in the buildings for whatever. So will we be leveraging those staff?
We are working, remember last board meeting, we went through how we were doing accommodations, but as you recall, staff has to provide their medical accommodation forms, and then we will look first at the hard-to-fill areas, so that would be math and science, and see what we need to do. So there's still a lot of, you can tell there's a lot of unknowns based on what we're trying to do, but we already know that we have vacancies in hard to fill. Yeah. We know that because we started the year out with vacancies. So that's the easiest place for us to be working through those accommodations.
Okay, so I guess my question is, and we don't have to answer it today, but I guess my question is, overall, how will we leverage those individuals, knowing that we will have students that won't be able to come back into the building? So will we make sure that we're making the best, don't take this word personal, use of our staff, even in these situations? I would hate for a math teacher to, because she can't return, we say, okay, well, we don't need you because that's not our setup. Well, we do need you.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's exactly the process we're going through. So the first process is we're trying to identify all the places we know we have openings and try to have solutions for that. And then we will have other issues that will come up that we'll be working with, building principals, trying to address how we're going to staff those particular areas.
Okay, and I have one last comment, and this comment is not meant to be negative whatsoever, but I'm a firm believer in the definition of insanity. And so with that being said, we continue to have the conversation about our staff and our staff not being there, and we've had a year that's been very quiet, and I'm not saying that our staff, we've not done anything for recruitment, but maybe it should be a larger conversation on what we can do in the future to make sure our classrooms are staffed. And so I know we will always have openings, but we're talking about some very critical subjects, and we continue to have the same problem. And so what else can we do besides we're trying to feel we're doing the same thing?
Mm-hmm. That gets down to incentives and bonuses and things like that you may have to consider. So those are great things to consider going forward.
But also HR is working on some innovative ways to attract staff that will not necessarily involve bonuses or additional pay, but just different ways of bringing what we are starting to call adjunct instructors, so that we have, just like you said, Ms. Clark, getting outside of what we normally have done, what other possibilities are out there.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Lopez, I have a question. I asked this question earlier, so it's not a surprise, but I want people to hear this because I was asked the question. What's being done about filtration in the building in regard to PPE supplies? Again, if you could verbalize that so everybody can hear it.
Thank you, Ms. Page.
I can answer the PPE supplies. Each building principal orders their PPE supplies for their campus. So they've ordered masks and any other equipment. So then as more masks are needed, they place the order with the storeroom. And in regards to the filtration system.
I answer that one, Chris. We're currently going to increase the airflow from the outside, and then we're also going to step up the changing of the filters. We change filters now twice a year. We'll be changing filters quarterly, and we're also researching these air handler units to go in each classroom. Doug is currently researching what those cost. We think we can find them for like $250 a classroom, and we have over 1,000 classrooms, but that would be a good use of CARES funding to pay for the cost of those to increase the airflow in the classrooms.
And another question, if someone, I said if, I didn't say they were to get COVID, is there CARES money to help them? Or would that individual have to rely on their sick days or their personal leave days?
There is no more CARES money. I think you're talking about the FFCRA money that we had through December. And so we have set up and are starting a sick leave pool for classified staff. Certified staff already has a sick leave pool. And that will allow those who have low balances to appeal to that pool of available hours. So we are putting that in place, which I think is a great thing for our district to be doing. We have never had that before for classified. But yes, they would be relying on their own sick or personal days for that. But we hope that we have this additional pool available that they could appeal to that.
Okay.
Dr. Miguel, I have a few questions, please.
Yes.
With the, so when people, they come back in person, have we had to modify the bus schedule so there won't be any crowding on the buses?
And I know Mr. Martin is working on that. At this point, I think, again, just a reminder that at least for April 5th, we're counting on half of our students coming, according to what parents have expressed their desire to keep their students at home or to send them to school. So at this point, we are counting on having half of the students, which would be less of a challenge. I don't know if Miguel is on the line, but I believe even when we have more students, I think routes will continue to transport the same number of students. And again, we're using all of the data that we're receiving. Students will have to wear masks. We will not be able to distance, but again, we're hearing more and more that it's more important the aspect of the mask on and of good and reliable masks than the actual distance on the bus. Miguel, I don't know if you're on the line, if you want to add anything.
I don't see him on there, Dr. Miguel, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, we'll have this conversation
But
more.
that is the conversation we have been having. If I get any more information from him,
Okay.
I will share.
And secondly, you know, we all received, I'm sure, this letter about the Early Childhood Center. Have those challenges been addressed?
And we received that letter today, right? So I shared it with the IIOs. I did respond to the teacher, and I think we addressed for sure the concern that they had about the nurse, because we will have a nurse in every school.
So do all of those children come back? I mean, they're not, elementary, middle. What's the schedule for them? Just all of them coming?
They would be on the same schedule.
Right.
When we say we should start saying we are including our EC children in our options. So it's EC 12.
Right. So April 5th
you.
is the target date for them too.
So does this also mean, we're talking teachers, does this mean all central office, everyone will be back in person
Yes.
and every place?
Yes.
And then finally.
Just like we are saying for school-based staff, when there is a challenge because of space, and we know that is still a concern with adults, we are looking at each case on a case-by-case basis. So in central office or even in some schools, there may still be a need for rotation if we have lots of adults in an area that doesn't allow for the distancing, because we're following the guidelines that right now we believe that children do not spread the virus at the same rate. But when we're talking about central office, we may have 20 or 30 people working in a room like this, for example, unable to social distance. So in that case, and when the work is able to be done remotely, we may have a rotating schedule. But we will all be back in person for sure before schools have everybody back.
Okay, and then my last question, for those students who do not return in person, what happens to the state assessment process?
They will have to come. They will have to come to take the assessment in person.
And they know
So
that.
just like we did ACT this week or KELPA this week, that they came into the building just for the assessment, they will have to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
One last comment, Dr. Miguel.
Yes.
Yes, the legislature's intent is clear, but it's not written.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps Bill Brady can provide us with, for lack of a better word, the conversation in the restroom,
Mm-hmm.
where they probably will tell their full intentions. But next week we are at turnaround. So those bills that are coming out of the Senate, which I had Leslie, and thank you, Ms. Smith, for sending that article about the one bill. I mean, it was clear, and there's no mistake of the concern, especially about schools like KCK that have been remote all along. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Nguyen. Thank you, board members. Are there any other comments, or there is an ask in front of the board regarding the two options and a recommendation from staff that was put on the floor as well. I'll revisit them just so everyone's aware. The recommendation from staff is to have in-person 4 days a week as was presented today. The other option is an updated hybrid model that was an update from the approved model that was done previously.
I make a motion that we agree to have the in-person 4 days a week that is recommended.
I second it.
There's a motion and a second for in-person 4 days a week for students at the April 5th date. Mm-hmm. Is there any discussion or further discussion or questions?
I just want to say, Dr. Miguel, if that date is too late, are you prepared to, and I guess, Greg, this is a question for you too, how do we respond?
I'm sorry, what? I'm not sure I understood the question.
The motion speaks to April 5th, is that correct?
Right, because that's the day that when students are coming back.
And question to you, Mr. Goheen, if the legislation mandates March 26th, what do we do?
Yeah, so it will depend upon what the language of the final piece of legislation looks like, obviously, and how they intend to police that. One issue that I would be concerned about is if they're going to treat kids who are not back in person as truant. I hope they don't go that direction with it.
Right.
But if they come back and mandate March 26th and there's no wiggle room, then we're going to have to push
We will
up from April
adjust, for sure.
26th.
It's 5 school days from March 26th to April 5th.
So we'll be able to adjust. Yes.
I just want to bring that out that.
Right, and we have been
it's
having those
possibility.
conversations, Dr. Wynn, that, we presented the plan as it was approved. We are trying to maintain the same dates because that is what we told staff, and we know that they are making plans accordingly. But I think we are all in agreement that if there is new legislation, that now it's the law that students be in person, we will always comply with the law and we will make it happen.
Okay, well, it needs to be, verbalized, so that's why.
I appreciate the clarification because I think staff needs to hear that these are our intentions now when there is no different legislation. If legislation passes in the next few days, we will have to maybe reconvene the board for a quick meeting and act accordingly or just consult with the board.
And just one last question for Mr. Goheen. How can the state legislature kill local control?
Yeah, I mean, to me, you've got a constitutional right in your local boards to operate the school district. And so I think, the state legislature can dictate certain things, and they obviously do as part of their statutory process. But I think that the local control, particularly over how the schools are operated, given virus and the local health officials and everything else, this gives a real challenge to that. I hope they don't do it. I think they're going to do it. And if they do, I think we're probably going to have to adjust and get our kids back in school by the 26th, and hope that at least KSDE will give us some leeway if we have parents who choose, even at that point, to not put their kids back in school, because that may happen.
Thank you.
Which makes me wonder, should we really be voting for April or should we be voting for March 26th? I mean, I don't want us to look unorganized. So it's like, now you're scrambling because we already knew this could happen, but we waited for it to happen and then it did happen. So what advice do you give? Greg, I'm putting you on the spot, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so my thought is that the plan that was presented to the board, the plan that has been presented to the parents and staff of the school district was April 5th. I think you should stick with that plan. But I think we all need to understand, and I think even the communication out needs to explain, the legislature may and likely will, I don't know if we want to put likely will in there, but the legislature certainly may vote to change that date. And if they do, then that's going to push up when staff are going to have to be back, when the kids are going to have to be back. So there is that 1 week period of time, five school days, that we may have to expedite what we're doing. And so I think if the legislature goes down that path, if they pass something, I think we need to be convening a school board meeting probably the next day to talk about how you want to handle it.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members, for great discussion, staff for the presentation and the thoughtful input in putting this together. There's a motion and a second on the floor. If there are no further questions, discussion, I would ask Ms. Smith for a roll call vote, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, and just want to encourage everybody, to read, write your legislature, because SB 235 is here. Yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
and Dr. Yeager.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you,
Thank
Ms.
you,
Scott.
Board.
So with that, we're now going to hear from our Health Services Coordinator, Elizabeth Morris, then from our Human Resources team for any updates, and followed by our District Athletic Director, Tammy Romstad, for an athletics action item for your consideration. Thank you.
Ms. Morris will be with us in just a minute. Give us a couple of minutes. Some technical difficulties again. Sorry about that. Do we need to have athletics go first, if you guys need a couple of more minutes?
I was going to volunteer, Dr. Miguel, if you would like me to.
Okay.
Ms. Kelly.
Ms. Morris, do you want us to do that, so that gives you a little bit of more time? So, Ms. Tushman.
Yeah. We already went through this mostly, I think, with some of the questions that were asked, but we are in the process of getting accommodation requests, and I'm sure once we go out tonight with whatever message on the new plan, we'll have probably more. I think right now we have about 40 requests, and as we stated, we're asking for the medical accommodations. That's what we're looking at, and in hard to fill areas. So that's basically where we're at with accommodations.
Now, when you say medical requests, how detailed
Yeah.
should it be? Because there's been some discrepancies about that. So
Right.
for clarity, can we get some clarity on that?
Yeah, it has been clarified, and we will be sending out more documentation to clarify that in several different ways. But basically, it's just as if you were filling out FMLA paperwork, because that's the accommodation or the medical accommodations we're talking about. People who cannot come back to work due to medical reasons.
Any
So,
other
Ms.
questions?
Tishman, we got a letter from a teacher, I guess, not I guess, a teacher who said in essence, she had to do this 3 times. Is that correct, or is that?
I don't know. Yeah,
You don't know?
I'm not sure, but I'm happy to look into it if you want me to let me know which one or who you're talking about. But hopefully
I
not.
don't remember the name. I assume all the board members received the same letter so we can forward it to Dr. Miguel.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah.
Be happy to look at it.
So you
But
have it.
that's the process we're going through right now. And just like we went through 2 weeks ago, we talked about what our process would be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Do we need a quick 10-minute break, 5-minute break to give time?
Or do you need me to share?
What
I'm not sure what the problem is.
Why is that the PowerPoint coming back?
Sorry, just a few technical issues for those watching at home or on Zoom. We're trying to work them out here. First time we're in person and remote, so you know
It's
there are going to be
showing.
a few hiccups along the way. So we appreciate your patience so that we can make sure you get the information necessary.
So I just wanted to go ahead and present, as of right now, on March 22nd, as we stand, all school-based
Okay.
staff are expected to return to the school unless they have a health-related accommodation on file with HR. That may be subject to change per the conversation we had earlier based on our state legislature. And Ms. Tushman just said considerations will be made to ensure that we have safe distance and maintained between staff and shared work areas at each school building.
Thank you, Ms. Scott.
Thank you, Ms. Scott, for fixing it.
I think we're going to go with
Good evening. So as part of our continuing discussions about student reentry, I'd like to provide you with an update on how COVID is impacting our community and our district. As far as COVID numbers in the county, you can see that for the week of February 8th through February 14th, the 7-day rolling average of cases was 24 per day, and the percent positivity was 16%. As of today, I did receive an update from the health department that it's more like 18 cases per day and 14% positivity. So we are continuing to see a downward trend in the community. In terms of our health services staffing, I'd like to explain a little bit more in detail about what the needs are of the district as far as nurses. So we do need to have 44 full-time nurses on staff in order to have a nurse in every single building. Currently, we have 34 nurses who reported to work on 2/18. That would have been last Monday, in order to provide full staffing for this current week in terms of the student testing that began and then supporting our other students that return for connectivity. Thank you again to the board for approving that contract for us last week for the new staffing agency. We now have 4 nurse staffing agencies who are assisting us with finding staffing. And so we have been able to bring on an additional 5 full-time nurses. So we have 7 long-term substitutes total and 2 additional starting next week. We do have 1 school that remains to be filled. That is an early childhood building, and so those students would not be returning until April, so we're in good shape there. But I do want to mention that even though we're very close to being fully staffed, we do have daily unscheduled absences that continue to impact our staffing. For example, today we had 4 unscheduled absences, and so that, on any given day, we could face that kind of a staffing pinch. And so we do have to be proactive and plan ahead for that. And so that is why we are asking these agencies to plan ahead and provide us with a few extra staff so that at 7 in the morning we're not, in a bad situation. And then in terms of our vaccination update, we did finish our first wave of vaccinating our staff, and we did have 2,411 staff members who did receive their vaccine. There are some who have received their second dose. I did receive some additional requests from staff to be vaccinated, and so even though we somewhat closed our window, we still will be able to make that available to our staff. And so more information will follow on that, but we will still be able to have staff who decided late that they can still receive the vaccine.
Any questions for Ms. Morris?
Thank you, Ms. Morris, for that update.
Can she break that down in terms of certified and non-certified staff?
For the vaccines, you mean?
Yeah, is it possible to get that data? How many certified staff got it? And how many, if she can't tell me tonight, can I find that information out? And how many non-certified staff have been vaccinated?
I'll be honest, it would be very difficult for me to get that information only because I am not collecting the records of the staff who had been vaccinated. So they signed up. I didn't ask them if they were classified or certified, and I just scheduled them. So it would be very difficult for me to go through that list of 2,400 to tell you for certain. It could be done, but it would be very difficult.
Okay, and then the early childhood, you said since they don't come back to April 5th, well, how soon are they going to get that person in so that they can familiarize themselves with the records and paperwork and when are we going to fill it?
So we do still have our staffing agencies working on getting more staff for us. So hopefully by the time I speak to you again, I'll be able to let you know that we're fully staffed.
And then you mentioned the daily unscheduled absences. I had heard at one of the schools that someone was severely ill. Do we know if, I'm not asking for a name, but I had just heard that they possibly weren't coming back.
We had several different absences today, so I guess I can't really speak to the ones specifically that you're asking about. We do have some staff who are out that may be out for a week to 2 weeks. And we do have some staff that could be out much longer, but those aren't counted into that report that I gave you.
Okay, so will the next update, will that adjustment be made so we can make sure that somebody is there at that building?
Yes, and that is why, like I mentioned in our previous board update, that we are asking to overfill with agency staff so that on any given day when things come up, we have someone available.
Clarification, who's responsible for ensuring that there's staff in the building that is properly staffed? Would that be that's not something that the board is responsible for, right? Wouldn't Dr. Miguel be able to report that to us? Sure that there's proper staffing and coverage?
So that's part of what I report to you in my Friday updates, that I can give you an update on the nurses, because I know that is one concern that the board has, and we have been updating as those positions are filled. Does that answer your question, Dr. Yeager?
To clarify, I think it's very important that we do not text our staff to do additional legwork for just one. I think it's important for the board as a whole to determine what reports is needed and what we are responsible for. I think it's very important for us to stay at a high level and allow people to do what they have been hired to do and rely on Dr. Miguel to be able to filter it. In our board handbook, it says, well, for all questions and concerns, then they should go to Dr. Miguel. So I would encourage us as a board to continue to follow that practice, that when situations or issues come up, regardless, we have to go through Dr. Miguel and not answer the community and address. If they have concerns, we have to rely on Dr. Miguel and the staff that's put in place to be able to handle these questions. We get a number of questions from community, and chain of command is very important. I see a lot of confusion that comes my way, saying, oh, I talked to this person, oh, I talked to that person. It will be very important during this time that we refer people back to the chain of command. If there's a building concern, principal, alert Dr. Miguel. If it's a parent concern, principal, and let them follow up. I think it's very important that we understand that protocol.
And just to reassure the board that you may be hearing about nurses who are having absences or having long-term absences, and we treat those in the same way that we treat the absence of any staff member. If it's a school-based staff who requires a substitute teacher or a substitute person, we will work on that. If we know that it's an extended absence, we will work on a plan for how to cover, either with a long-term sub or with a plan for how we're going to support the school. So the absence of nurses, we treat them as the absence of any staff member that as we have said, all of our staff is essential for the functioning of schools. So we are not neglecting any one position in favor of any other. We're just being very vigilant about having support and coverage for any of the positions that we need to have when students are in.
Thank you,
You know
Dr.
what?
Miguel.
I thank you for that information. But last year, we had 8 vacancies. And with this pandemic, we need to make sure that we have nurses in every building. We can't take it lightly.
And we don't,
So,
Ms.
yeah.
Page, and I can assure you that Ms.
Okay,
Morris
but if
is.
we're on another year. Last year was 8, back to 8, and we're working on it, but we gotta make
So-
sure we do this, because I don't want secretaries
So
being the nurse.
I'm gonna jump in real quick and just continue to move us along. I appreciate the conversation on both sides. I do think there is a fine line in terms of the questions that we ask, and I think it's important for us to ask questions. However, I also want to appreciate and say, our staff are doing their due diligence and provide the updates necessary. So I do just want to continue to move us along. I do think our staff is working to make sure that we are fully staffed at all times. It is difficult, and specifically with our nurses right now, I think it's important, absolutely, no one's disagreeing with that. But it is difficult, and there are unplanned vacancies that I know our staff are working so hard to make sure get filled. And it's the nature of the beast, unfortunately, but we are working towards filling those vacancies. So I appreciate the conversation. Ms. Morris, thank you so much for the presentation and for your continued work. I know you were overworked, and I appreciate the time that you put in to keep all of our staff and students safe. So thank you for tonight. So we're going to continue on and with
Well,
our...
Mr. Lopez, can I ask Dr. Miguel a question, and she can't answer it.
Please.
But let me ask, based on Ms. Page's question, the idea of looking at the big picture of knowing who has received the vaccine and who hasn't, how do you know, and I guess this, for me, is an HR question, maybe the nurse can't handle it, but if you have so many bus drivers that have or have not, or so many nutritional workers who have or have not, for the most part, the teacher is going to be in the have category, right?
We have made the vaccine available to everyone, and I want to stress what Ms. Morris said, that although at one point we had given a deadline to sign up, we are encouraging everyone to reach out, and she's going to put a new protocol in place so that people can sign up. But I do not know who has taken the vaccine or not, because
So that's my point. Kind of in a management of health idea that I know you want to know. I mean, we know historically there's going to be a reluctance to the vaccine. We hope some have gotten over that, some still haven't. But in the big picture of the system from going in another direction, like to be infected, I mean, one would think you kind of want to have a knowledge of how many in this department, how many in that department, that interact with kids that, just want to, coming back in person, just want to stay safe. So I didn't ask you to respond. I'm just saying, one would think that could be a thought process that I don't know how to get to it if you're not schematically saying how many of the bus drivers, how many nutritional workers, how many teachers, how many...
I think one of the issues you might run into is around HIPAA and protected privacy information. I think that's a great question, Dr. Wing, because I think a lot of employers, especially large employers, are really trying to figure that out in terms of understanding who in their staff has been vaccinated or not, and being able to continue to do business in a safe way. So I think that's a fair question, and something I think it sounds like staff is working through to make sure that we have a better understanding. And we all know it's not mandated to take the vaccine. So it's a delicate, especially with privacy information.
Right.
But I appreciate that question, because I think that's something we all have on our, have as well.
And we can explore that because it would be useful to know, but at this point, you know, it's really up to each individual to disclose that information.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we have Ms. Romstad to present an athletics update.
There we go. Good evening.
Good
President
evening.
Lopez, members of the board, Dr. Miguel. The good news is we have 10 teams, 5 boys and 5 girls, that will be in postseason play, whether it's a play-in game on Saturday or hosting a sub-state or going to one next week. I want to remind you that our delayed season puts us at about 10 games. The opponents around us started on time, and they're at about 20 games. And so hosting a game depends on your winning percentage. So we might have a record of 4-3, 4-5, and there may be a team at 12-4. And so it's coming down to tonight's games, whether we have a percentage that would allow us to host a game. So in the hope that we would actually be hosting sub-states, which gives our kids an opportunity to play at home, to move on into the state tournament, I have a action item to allow 2 spectators per participant as we host the basketball sub-state. The current rules do allow for the occupancy. Our gyms basically seat somewhere between 1,000 and 1,200 spectators, so we're looking at maybe 112 spectators, along with the people that would be playing, the coaches, the people working the game, officers, administrators, at about 185 people, which in a gym of 1,000, 1,200 seats would be easy to accommodate. We would also mark the bleachers to make it easy for families when they enter. What happens is you get a pass gate from the opponents. Somebody has to be on that pass gate in order to come in. And that's how they've done throughout the state of Kansas. Everybody's done that this year. I did talk to the executive director last week, Bill Fafley, to make sure that with some of our restrictions that we would still be able to host in the event that our kids made it that far. And he was very honest and said, your kids have earned it. If you can host it, we're going to go there. But I would strongly advise that since this is a state tournament, this is the first round that we play here, that we would consider allowing the 2 spectators to come in. And the nice thing is, since all 5 schools will be in some form of either a play-in game or hosting, they would all have an opportunity to have spectators at least at one of their games. So the action item or the proposal would be that spectators would be required to mask upon arrival, that we would allow 2 spectators per participant. I want to make sure the participant is the players on both teams, the coaches, any cheerleaders that you would have present. Those are your participants. The other people at the game are game management people working. So it's for the participants. This is in line with what other schools are currently doing around the state of Kansas. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Romstad. So there is a recommendation in front of the board.
I don't have any questions unless someone does. I would like to make a recommendation that we move forward with allowing spectators based upon the recommendations provided tonight.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Further questions or discussion?
I just have a question. Are there concessions at these games?
Based on your decision, and I will have logistical meetings tomorrow, but if we do have concessions, it would be only limited to pre-contained items like water bottles, pop bottles, candy, maybe chips.
Okay. Hearing no other discussion or questions, Ms. Smith, roll call vote, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Jamie Humphrey,
Jamie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
and Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Romstad. And good luck to all of our teams.
Yeah.
Mr. Lopez, can I ask Ms. Romstad a question?
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't have to do with what we just voted on. For the next set of sports to come up, I didn't understand when I was looking through payables that I didn't know we hired athletic trainers. I assumed that when the kids were getting training, it was done by their coaches. And I was told yesterday or today when I got the email that we did have athletic trainers. So I don't remember that being a part of the conversation when we were talking about letting the kids go back to be trained. So for the upcoming sports, are we having athletic trainers?
Yes, our athletic trainers' basic role is not to do the workouts to train kids. It's to tape, treat, help prevention. They do mitigations. And so they're on site with us, one at each high school. They were very limited in the amount of time they spent last year because we did not have a spring season. They gave us a discount. I'm assuming, I've talked to them, there will probably be some type of a discount for this year. But currently, we do have our fall sports going, our winter sports going, and spring starting on Monday. And how they're juggling all that, I don't know.
Now, is this something new that we just added trainers, or we always had trainers? Because I thought it was at the school, the coaches. I didn't know we were taping and the trainers are doing. So is this something we have?
Yes, this has been here for a while. I couldn't tell you how long. I've only been here a couple years, but I would say it's been at least in the last 5 because I've seen a Children's Mercy contract for 5, and I'm not sure what we did prior to that.
KU. Sounds like KU was previous to
That's what I
that,
was
so,
thinking.
yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Romstad.
Okay, so the next is policy review, and I'm assuming that is Greg.
Okay, perfect. Well, and before we move on to policy, again, I just want to, I know there were some decisions made tonight by the board that staff have really worked through and continue to work through, and I know it's challenging, but I just want to say I appreciate all of the staff's work in putting together these recommendations and putting together the work that you put in front of the board, and I really appreciate the board's diligence in asking your questions. And searching for the best possible path forward for our students. So I appreciate the dialogue. I know we spend quite a bit of time on reentry at every board meeting, but I think you all asked some great questions, and it's necessary just to have a good, thoughtful dialogue. So thank you, board members, and thank you, staff, for the work you're doing.
You're welcome.
So we are on to the policy review. A couple of board meetings ago, we accepted these policies for a first read. They are up in front of us for a second read, so hopefully you had a chance to review them. And Greg, I don't know if you have anything you want to share with us on this.
No, these are the policies that primarily are recommendations from KASB. We made some slight modifications to them to make them gel with your current policy. You should have on the board agenda both the current policy and then a red line version of what the proposed change is. Again, these deal with things like having health officials be able to shut down the schools or send kids home or things like that. So that's what these are. GAR primarily deals with communicable diseases and allows individuals who have diagnosed communicable diseases to be excluded from the district or district-owned property, which that's the amendment or the change. Obviously, this is directed or geared toward COVID, which we didn't have a policy in place to deal with before COVID happened. I don't know if you guys want me to take the policies one at a time or not. I don't know if people have any specific changes to them or questions about them, but I'm happy to answer any at any point in time. The next policy was the evacuations and emergencies, and again, that just deals with allowing school closures to happen if there's a health or safety concern. You already have the authority to do that, but this makes it clear that it's part of the policy, and that's EBBD. And then the last one is the JGCC, which is the communicable diseases one that applies specifically to students. So unless there's specific concerns or questions, our recommendation would be to go with these changes to make the policies a little bit more clear, to make it certain that local health officials have the authority to step in and provide a basis for these types of exclusions from the school setting.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the second read proposed changes to policy GAR, policy JGCC, and policy EBBD.
I second the motion.
Thank you. There's a motion and a second. Any questions or further discussion? If not, Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
and Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goheen.
And Mr. Lopez?
Yes, ma'am.
And Mr. Goheen, we will need to work on a policy about the encumbered funds. And also, Mr. Lopez, we were supposed to discuss the equity in employment policy that was rejected earlier. So how do we proceed on that?
One of the things I would suggest, we had discussions about committees for the 2 committee assignments, and my recollection is that the board had wanted to meet as a whole on the policies. I think Ms. Page actually was the one that was pushing for this, and I think it's a great idea to have policy discussion meetings separate from the full board meeting, so we're not tired when we're going through the policy changes and suggestions. If that's the case, my suggestion is we get a date set to have a board meeting just on policies, and let's discuss ones that you guys want to take a look at in advance of when we start getting the recommendations from KSB. So we also have that in place when we get those recommendations. Kind of like what we did when we had the finance committee meeting. I think it'd be nice to have that on the schedule so that it's at a regular interval so that we can move forward on those types of things. I think you had a couple that you were suggesting. I think somebody else had another policy they were suggesting as well. So I think that would be the way I would suggest handling it.
Okay, so Dr. Nguyen, I'll work with Ms. Smith to get an email out to see what some dates are. I know our March is filling up pretty quickly with special meetings, regular meetings, committee meetings, but I think, like Mr. Goheen said, this is important to get us back on schedule with our policies, to really review policies, and again, to those 2 specific that you mentioned. So I will work with Ms. Smith to get something on the books within the next few weeks when time allows, so that we can give the proper time to it.
Randy, and also please know we've not passed the policies completely from last year that KASB recommended either. So we would have to pull those.
Okay, so it sounds like we're gonna have an all-nighter. Thank you. So I'll get on that. Ms. Smith, make a note to remind me to work with you on getting a date for those. Thank you, Dr. Nguyen, for the reminder.
Okay.
Okay, so we are at our consent agenda. I actually am requesting to pull off item I. I is in Indiana for a procedural reason, but.
And I'd like to set aside H for some questions, please.
Did you say H?
H like happy.
Okay, thank you. All right. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda minus items H and I?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second. Ms. Smith?
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
and Dr. Yeager.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Nguyen, is it okay if I take on item I first?
Sure.
It should be pretty quick. So, yep. Give us just 1 second here. Thank you. So I am requesting to remove item I simply for the fact that there was a conflict that was presented in terms of a potential vote. So Ms. Humphries has excused herself and is abstaining, and has, for those that aren't in the room, I just want to make note that she has left the room for this vote. So that's the only reason I'm pulling that item off of there just for procedural sake. So otherwise, I would entertain a motion to approve item I.
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Questions? Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries.
Janie Humphries will abstain.
That's correct, thank you. Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
and Dr. Yeager.
Dr. Yeager, yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Let me ask Ms. Humphries to come back in. Here she comes. All right, so we have Dr. Nguyen, item H, the treasurer's report.
Right. And I would like to just take the liberty to address item C. I didn't want to have a discussion on a related HR item, but I think we need to consider putting the vacancy report on the consent agenda for more transparency. We don't have to decide it tonight, but at the next meeting, I will make a motion for that. It has been in the past public, and I believe it needs to be public again. So, but with the treasurer's report, I'd like to request that when we get the treasurer's report, Ms. Kaiser, we get the current encumbered funds report. What is in the library is I guess the January, but now it's February because the treasurer's report is essentially February. So there's no way to understand if there's any, there's a couple, I'll say contingency reserve is the same. That figure was the same, the ending, but the others weren't. So for clarification, I think it is probably better for us to get the update. Because when do you submit those to the Department of Education? At the very first of the month?
Correct. I submit them to the Department of Education by the 12th of the month, and that ends on the prior last day of the month. So that's what I'm.
You understand what I'm saying though, right?
Right. So you're asking for example, this month, you'd want the January 31st report and then the current report, such as last Thursday or Friday when I submitted to Leslie.
Correct.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. No problem.
Okay. Thank you.
I need additional clarification about the vacancy report. Would you provide us with rationales and the reason why we would need that report? It doesn't have to be now, but since it's
no, I'm welcome.
Vote on it.
To do it now. In the past, the vacancy report was public, and it was placed
part of our board.
Excuse me.
I don't recall it being part of our agenda or it being in our report.
Well, prior to you being here, it was. And all we have to do is go back and look at the minutes.
So what's the purpose of it? I guess I need clarification. And also I would need to know how much, the rationale for it or why we would need that report. What will we do with it?
No, we have it. It's in our library, our private library. I'm saying it should be public so that for transparency, if someone says, and I'll go deep, I applied for X job. You said they were all filled. There is a vacancy report that said there is 10 openings. For transparency, that wouldn't happen because we're not going to have that. But in the past, it was public. I believe for transparency in the future, it should be public.
And I think it used to be part of the HR report, so we can, if I remember correctly, the vacancy report would just be one attachment to the HR report that stated how many vacancies in each category. Is
And it was
that-
on the second meeting, and I think Greg, Mr. Goheen, altered the way that it should have, it just wasn't in the narrative. I think you suggested it was separate. So
Yeah,
it's a past practice, Dr. Yeager.
Yeah, when you guys had done it as part of the package, I suggested it be a separate standalone, not standalone, it could be a page to the document, but
A
not.
separate
not-
page, that's how I remember it. Right.
So I guess my question is, if someone sees the document and is questioning, I apply for this position, but it's not there, then what would be the procedure? Or
I don't have a procedure. I'm just saying, I gave that example. I'm just saying, past practice, it should be public. It has been public, past practice. Do you understand? I'm sure you understand past practice.
I don't think, you know what, it's not appropriate to be insulting. You don't have to be insulting.
I don't mean to be insulted. I'm just
So
asking.
I'm
you're
going
just
to,
asking, did you
excuse me,
understand?
excuse me.
Because it's past
Excuse
practice.
me, thank you. I'm going to
struggling.
jump in really quickly. I don't think we need to have that back and forth right now, y'all. It's
I
not the time nor the
appreciate
place. Ms. Clark, you had something to say?
No, I was just gonna say, and this may not be the appropriate time, but I know that you're working on training. And so maybe training needs to also be who manages who. Our board meetings, I mean, how should that look? And so I'm giving that to you, Mr. Lopez, maybe it's something that we should work with KASB. I'm sorry. I think maybe there's some confusion. So when we're asking questions and we're using our strategies, let's make sure we're using them right. And we're doing things in decency and in order.
Thank you for that reminder, Ms. Clark. I
We're here for our
appreciate
staff.
that.
We're not here for anybody else.
I appreciate that reminder. Thank you, Ms. Clark.
But Mr. Lopez, I hear what she's saying, but people have the right to their opinion.
And
then
I agree with you.
Wait, let me finish, because I let you speak.
You're right.
Please, people have the right to their opinion. And what one may seem it's not appropriate, the other person says it's not. Come on, because we got some strong personalities. We've come a long way. We still have work to do, but let's be careful with that, because that gets real.
But I think it's important to respect when someone's talking. It's how you talk to people, to have that level of respect. And if someone's asking you questions, just like you question others, there should be just a clear understanding. Or like I said, write it out so the board can clearly understand we're going to vote on it next time. Just provide an additional summary around it.
So since I started this conversation, I do want to finish it. Ms. Page, I actually agree with you. I agree that people's questions should not be, that people should have the right to ask questions. And I also agree that it's not what you say, it is how you say it. And to be honest, that goes for all board members. It does not go for one or two.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. I completely agree in terms of how we speak to one another and how the public perceives us. Y'all remember, we're being watched at all times. So, that discourse and friendly and respectful discourse is great. But let's remember, y'all, we're on the same team and we're working for the kids. And I love the heated passion. I do. And I think that's great because it shows that y'all care and that's why you're in these seats. But I'll just remind us that we can do it in a way that's respectful of each other and of our staff especially. So with that, so Dr. Nguyen, I don't know if you made a motion for the vacancy report. I heard you say, or you're just requesting that be added. Is that correct? Okay.
And we can do that.
Okay. So I don't think we need to do a motion for that. All right. Thank you. So I would entertain a motion to, I can't hear you, Dr. Nguyen. I'm sorry. You're muted. Were you saying something?
Move to accept the treasurer's report.
Thank you.
I second it.
Thank you. Ms. Smith, roll call, please.
Yolanda Clark,
Yolanda Clark, yes.
Maxine Drew,
Maxine Drew, yes.
Janie Humphries,
Janie Humphries, yes.
Randy Lopez,
Randy Lopez, yes.
Wanda Brownlee Page,
Wanda Brownlee Page, yes.
Dr. Nguyen,
Dr. Nguyen, yes.
and Dr. Yeager.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tonight's meeting. Great meeting. Thank you, staff, for the great work that you continue to do. It's good to see buses, like Dr. Miguel said, driving around with a few kids in there. Thank you, families and students. We love y'all. We're proud of y'all. Keep doing the great work you're doing. Yeah, we're proud of you. So keep working hard. Thank you. With that, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.